The great chamber of the Galactic Council hung in the void of space like a massive crystalline flower. Its transparent walls showed the endless stars beyond, and inside, representatives from 100 worlds gathered in growing panic. The emergency session had been called 3 days ago, when the telescopes at the edge of known space detected something that made even the oldest civilizations afraid. The Void Swarm was coming back. Ambassador Elena, Chen stood quietly in the human delegation area, watching as one alien race after another presented their military forces on the massive holographic display at the chamber's center. Her dark suit looked plain compared to the elaborate garments and strange body coverings of the other species around her. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 15 years ago, and they were still the newest members, still learning the ways of galactic politics. The Crystalline Collective went first. Their representative, a being that looked like living glass shaped into a vaguely humanoid form, gestured with limbs that caught and scattered light in beautiful patterns. Above them, the hologram showed their fleet, hundreds of ships that seemed made of pure crystal and light. They moved through space without visible engines, shifting through different dimensions like ghosts. Our energy phase warships can strike from 7 different dimensional layers simultaneously, the crystalline representative announced, their voice like wind chimes. The enemy will never know from where the attack comes. The other delegates made sounds of approval. Some had vocal cords and spoken words. Others communicated through colors, scents, or electromagnetic pulses that were translated by devices everyone wore. All of them were impressed. Next came the Zephyr Dominion. Their ambassador floated in a containment field, a being of pure gas and electrical energy. Their ships appeared in the hologram, sleek and impossibly fast, moving at speeds that shouldn't be possible. Our quantum drive interceptors can cross a solar system in mere seconds. The Zephyr boomed, their voice like thunder translated into speech. They can fire while moving at 98% of light speed. Nothing can escape them. More sounds of approval echoed through the chamber. The Krathax Empire came third. Their delegate was massive, covered in thick armor-like skin with 4 arms and eyes that glowed red. When their fleet appeared in the hologram, even the other advanced races seemed impressed. The ships were enormous, bristling with weapons that looked like they could tear planets apart. Our dreadnoughts carry singularity bombs, the Krathax delegate growled. Each one can create a black hole strong enough to consume an entire enemy fleet. We have faced the Void Swarm before in the ancient wars. We know how to kill them. The chamber filled with the sounds and signals of confidence. The Void Swarm had been sleeping for thousands of years, but now they were awake. Yet surely with these advanced fleets they could be stopped. Then it was humanity's turn. Ambassador Chen stepped forward, her movements slow compared to some of the quicker alien species. She raised her hand and the human fleet appeared in the hologram above. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then someone made a sound. It might have been a cough in their language or perhaps a laugh. Then another joined in. Soon, waves of what could only be described as laughter spread through the assembled delegates. The human ships looked nothing like the elegant vessels of the other races. They were blocky and angular, with visible seams where metal plates had been welded together. Massive engines jutted from their rear sections, and Chen could see the barely hidden smirks as aliens noticed the visible exhaust trails in the simulation. The ships had gun turrets, actual rotating weapons mounted on their hulls like something from a primitive age. Ambassador Chen, the council speaker said, trying to keep their translation device from conveying their amusement too clearly. "These are your warships?" "Yes, council speaker," Chen replied calmly. "This is Battle Group Defiant. 15 dreadnoughts, 30 cruisers, and 45 destroyers. They are ready to join the defense fleet. But they use fusion drives?" a delegate from the Whisper Collective asked, their tentacles quivering in what their species did when they found something funny. "And is that metal armor plating?" "Yes," Chen said simply. "Do they actually have crew compartments?" The crystalline representative asked, their voice rising in pitch. "You send living beings inside these vessels?" "All our ships are crewed," Chen confirmed. "We don't trust automated systems for complex combat decisions." This brought more laughter. Every advanced race had moved to drone warfare centuries ago. Only the most primitive species still risked actual lives in space combat. And those weapons, the Zephyr Dominion's ambassador pointed at the hologram. "Are those kinetic projectile launchers?" Railguns, missile batteries, and torpedo tubes, Chen listed. Yes. The Krethax delegate made a rumbling sound that their translator rendered as a chuckle. You fight with metal slugs and chemical explosives? How traditional. We use what works, Chen replied, her face showing no emotion. The council speaker cleared their throat, or made the equivalent gesture for their species. Well, humanity, we appreciate your willingness to contribute. However, given the nature of your fleet, we think it would be best if you took a support position. Support position? Chen asked. Yes, rearguard duties. Supply protection. That sort of thing. The speaker's tone made it clear they were being diplomatic. They were telling the humans to stay out of the way. Chen looked around the chamber. She saw the barely hidden contempt in the aliens' faces, or whatever they had instead of faces. The advanced races with their energy weapons and dimensional drives and quantum technology thought humanity's fleet was a joke. They saw metal boxes with engines and guns, relics from a more primitive time. We will take whatever position the council assigns us, Chen said finally. The speaker seemed relieved. Excellent. All fleet contingents will gather at the Sigma Persei Junction in 4 days. The Void Swarm will arrive there in approximately 1 week. We will meet them with the full might of galactic civilization. The other delegates made sounds of agreement and confidence. Their advanced technology would surely defeat the enemy. As the session ended and the aliens filed out, still making jokes about the human museum pieces, Chen stood alone for a moment, looking at the hologram of her species' fleet. The ships did look old-fashioned compared to the sleek vessels of the other races. They were built from steel and titanium, powered by nuclear fusion, armed with weapons that threw physical projectiles through space. But Chen remembered something her military advisor, Admiral Kowalski, had told her before she came to this meeting. Let them laugh, he had said. Our ships were built to fight in every kind of hell humanity could imagine. They've got backup systems for their backup systems. Every weapon has 3 different ways to fire it. Every critical system can be operated manually if the computers fail. They think we're primitive, but we're survivors. And when things go wrong, when their fancy technology fails them, they'll learn why humanity builds the way we do. Chen touched her communication device. Admiral Kowalski, the council has given us the rearguard position. Perfect, came the admiral's reply. That means we'll have the best view when their advanced ships meet reality. Our fleet will be ready. Chen looked out at the stars through the transparent walls. Somewhere out there, the Void Swarm was coming. The aliens thought their energy weapons and quantum drives would win the day. They had forgotten, or perhaps never learned, a simple truth. Sometimes a well-aimed rock beats the fanciest sword. The humans would wait in the rear guard position. They would watch, and when the time came, the steel giants would show the galaxy what humanity had learned in their long, bloody history of warfare. Never underestimate the simple solution, never mock the old ways, and never ever laugh at the weapons that have been tested in 1,000 battles. The aliens would learn. One way or another, they would learn. The Sigma Persei Junction was a region of space where 5 different star systems came close together. Relatively speaking, it was the perfect place to make a stand, with enough room for the massive combined fleet to maneuver, but narrow enough that the Void Swarm couldn't simply go around them. Admiral Marcus Kowalski stood on the bridge of the UNS Indomitable, flagship of the human fleet. The bridge was cramped compared to the luxurious command centers of the alien vessels. Metal walls, actual physical controls, screens that displayed information in simple graphics. Everything was designed to be repaired quickly, operated manually if needed, and survive almost anything. Status of the fleet? Kowalski asked. All ships in position, sir. Lieutenant Sarah Park reported from the tactical station. We're holding at grid reference Zulu 7, exactly where the council ordered us. Which meant they were behind everyone else, Kowalski thought. The rear guard. The position you gave to ships you didn't trust to do real fighting. On the main view screen, he could see the rest of the galactic fleet spread out before them. The crystalline collective's ships shimmered and faded in and out of normal space. The Zephyr Dominion's interceptors darted around at incredible speeds, leaving trails of light. The Krethax dreadnoughts hung in space like enormous metal mountains, their weapons charged and ready. Sensor contact, Park announced suddenly. Multiple contacts. Hundreds of them. No, thousands. They're coming through from dark space. The Void Swarm had arrived. Kowalski watched as the enemy appeared on the sensors. They weren't ships in any normal sense. They were creatures, living beings the size of spacecraft evolved or designed for survival in the vacuum of space. They looked like a nightmare mixture of different animals with armor like shells, tentacles, claws, and mouths full of teeth. Some were small, the size of fighters. Others were massive, as large as the biggest dreadnoughts. "All ships, this is Fleet Command," came the voice of the crystalline commander over the communication channel. "Begin the attack. Show these creatures the power of civilized warfare." The alien fleet moved forward as one. It was beautiful in a way, Kowalski had to admit. The different species worked together smoothly, their advanced technology allowing perfect coordination. The crystalline ships fired first. Beams of pure energy, pulled from other dimensions, lanced across space. Where they hit, void swarm creatures simply vanished, erased from existence. The aliens on the command channel made sounds of triumph. The Zephyr interceptors came next, moving so fast they were almost impossible to see. They fired weapons that broke apart the molecular bonds of matter itself. Void creatures exploded into clouds of atoms. Then the Krithax dreadnoughts unleashed their singularity bombs. Small black holes bloomed in space, sucking in dozens of void creatures at a time, crushing them into nothing. "They're doing well," Park observed. "Too well," Kowalski muttered. He'd read the old records, the ancient files about the void swarm from thousands of years ago. They were supposed to be almost impossible to kill. This was too easy. For 10 minutes, the galactic fleet dominated the battle. Energy weapons, matter disruptors, quantum torpedoes, dimensional cutters. Every advanced technology in the galaxy was on display, and the void swarm was being destroyed by the thousands. Then, everything changed. Kowalski saw it happen on the sensors before anyone else seemed to notice. The void creatures that were still alive started to change. Their shells became reflective like mirrors. When the next wave of energy beams hit them, the beams bounced off harmlessly. "Fleet Command, this is indomitable," Kowalski tried to warn them. "The enemy is adapting to energy weapons. I recommend switching to human vessel, maintain communication silence," the crystalline commander cut him off. "We are handling the situation," but they weren't. Kowalski watched as the void swarm continued to evolve in real time. Some creatures developed organs that absorbed energy instead of being hurt by it. Others grew layers of armor that shifted and changed at the molecular level, becoming immune to matter disruptors. The Krithax launched another wave of singularity bombs. This time the void creatures simply opened what looked like mouths and swallowed the black holes. The creatures grew larger, as if the energy from the black holes had fed them. "Fleet Command, enemy has adapted to all energy-based weapons," the Zephyr ambassador reported, their voice no longer confident. "Our interceptors are ineffective. Requesting new orders." Crystalline fleet shifting to dimensional phase attacks, the Crystal Commander announced. Their ships began to flicker between dimensions, trying to attack from unexpected angles. The void swarm adapted again. Some creatures seemed to develop the ability to exist in multiple dimensions at once. They caught the crystalline ships mid-phase and tore them apart with claws and teeth. Panic began to spread through the command channels. The advanced races had relied on their technology, their energy weapons, their quantum drives, and dimensional tricks. Now all of it was useless. "Zephyr fleet is retreating," Park reported. "They've lost 60% of their ships. Krithax dreadnoughts are falling back," another officer called out. "The enemy is boarding them." Kowalski watched as the carefully planned battle fell apart. The void creatures learned and adapted faster than anyone had expected. Every weapon used against them became useless within minutes. The aliens' greatest strength, their advanced technology, had become their weakness. They had nothing else to fall back on. "Crystalline command to all ships," came the voice, now filled with fear. "General retreat. Fall back to secondary positions. We need time to develop new weapons." But the void swarm wasn't giving them time. The creatures pressed forward, learning from every attack, evolving with every minute. Ships that had seemed invincible were being torn apart by claws and teeth. "Admiral, the fleet is in full retreat," Park said. "All alien vessels are pulling back." Kowalski nodded slowly. He'd seen this before in a way. Not in space, but in human history. Advanced forces defeated by enemies who adapted and learned. High-tech weapons failing against simple, brutal efficiency. "What are your orders, sir?" Park asked. The command channels were full of chaos now. Ships screaming for help. Commanders trying to reorganize. The void swarm pressing forward, unstoppable, adapting to everything thrown at them. Kowalski looked at his crew. They were scared. They just watched the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy get torn apart. But they were also ready. Human ships might be primitive, but they were crewed by people who understood that survival wasn't about having the best technology. It was about being tougher, meaner, and more stubborn than the enemy. All human ships, Kowalski said into the fleet communication channel. This is Indomitable. Move to attack formation Alpha 7. Load all kinetic weapons. Prepare for close engagement. Sir, the Council ordered us to hold position, an officer reminded him. The Council is running away, Kowalski replied. Someone needs to slow these things down or they'll chase the fleet all the way back to Council space. We're going in, but Admiral, our weapons are primitive. If the aliens' energy weapons didn't work, that's exactly why ours will, Kowalski cut him off. He leaned forward in his chair, watching the void swarm grow larger on the screen. Those creatures adapted to energy, to quantum effects, to dimensional warfare. They've never seen what we're about to hit them with. He opened the channel to all human ships. All vessels, this is Admiral Kowalski. The enemy has adapted to every fancy weapon in the galaxy. Time to show them what happens when you bring teeth to a gunfight. All ships advance. For Earth, for humanity. And for every species that thinks we're too primitive to matter. Let's teach these things about good old-fashioned violence. The human fleet moved forward. 90 blocky, angular ships with fusion drives and metal armor. They accelerated toward the void swarm, while the advanced alien fleets retreated behind them. On the command channels, Kowalski could hear confused voices. What are the humans doing? They're moving forward. Are they insane? Their weapons are even more primitive than, oh no. Oh no. Because someone had finally understood what was about to happen. The void swarm had adapted to everything advanced. But they'd never faced anything truly primitive. And they were about to learn why humanity had survived and thrived in a dangerous universe. Commander Lisa Zhao watched from the bridge of the UNS Thermopylae as the human fleet closed the distance to the void swarm. Behind them, the alien vessels continued their retreat, leaving a trail of debris and disabled ships. Ahead, thousands of bioships writhed and twisted in space, their bodies still shifting and changing as they adapted to their environment. Range in 30 seconds, her weapons officer announced. All batteries stand ready, Zhao commanded. Target the largest clusters. Fire on my mark. The Thermopylae shuddered as it picked up speed. The fusion engines, considered primitive by galactic standards, pushed the massive vessel forward with raw, brutal force. Around them, the rest of the human fleet matched their acceleration, forming a wedge formation that looked ancient even by human standards. On the communication channels, the alien observers were still talking. The humans are going to die, someone said. They must have gone mad. Another added. Wait. A third voice cut in. It sounded like the Krethak's ambassador. What weapons are those? Because the human ships were opening their gun ports, revealing rows upon rows of weapons that the advanced races hadn't seen in actual combat for thousands of years. Railguns, massive electromagnetic cannons designed to throw solid projectiles at incredible speeds. Missile batteries loaded with high-explosive warheads. Torpedo tubes carrying shaped charges meant to punch through armor. Range, the weapons officer called out. All batteries, Zhao said calmly. Commence firing. The Thermopylae, all 14,000 tons of her, seemed to leap backward as every weapon on her starboard side fired at once. Hundreds of solid metal slugs, each one weighing several tons, shot out at thousands of meters per second. Missiles streaked away on trails of chemical fire. Torpedoes launched with bursts of compressed gas, all across the human fleet. 90 ships opened fire simultaneously. The first railgun slugs hit 3 seconds later. A void creature the size of a cruiser took a direct hit from a depleted uranium penetrator round. The slug, moving at 8 kilometers per second, hit the creature's shell and punched straight through. The kinetic energy transferred into the creature's body, and it exploded from the inside out. Another creature tried to adapt, its shell thickening and hardening. A salvo of armor-piercing missiles hit it. The chemical explosives detonated on contact and the creature was torn into pieces. Keep firing, Zhao ordered. Don't give them time to adapt, that was the key. The void swarm could evolve to counter threats, but it needed time. The alien energy weapons had given them that time, striking from a distance with exotic physics that took minutes to understand and counter. Human weapons were simple. Metal moving fast, chemical reactions. Physical force that evolution couldn't easily adapt to because it was too basic, too fundamental. How do you evolve to survive a chunk of metal hitting you at several kilometers per second? The answer was that you couldn't, not quickly enough. The human fleet tore into the void swarm like a chainsaw through flesh. Railgun rounds punched through creature after creature. High explosive missiles detonated in clusters, taking out dozens of the smaller bioships. Torpedoes slammed into the larger ones, their shaped charges designed specifically to crack open armored targets. "They're trying to adapt," the tactical officer reported. "Some creatures are growing thicker armor. Switch to armor-piercing rounds," Zhao commanded, "and target their joints and softer sections." The beauty of human weapons was their variety. Energy weapons from the advanced races all worked on similar principles, manipulating exotic physics. But humans had developed hundreds of different kinetic weapons over their history. Armor-piercing, high-explosive, fragmentation, incendiary, shaped charges, contact fuses, timed fuses, proximity fuses. When one type didn't work, they switched to another. A group of void creatures tried to form a defensive wall, linking their bodies together to create a massive living shield. The human fleet launched a spread of bunker-buster torpedoes, weapons designed to punch through fortified positions on planets. The torpedoes hit the living wall and detonated after penetrating several meters, blowing the formation apart from the inside. "Direct hit on target cluster 7, the weapons officer reported with satisfaction. Enemy formation breaking up, but the void swarm was learning. Some creatures began to dodge, moving unpredictably to avoid the railgun fire. Others tried to grab the missiles before they could detonate, using tentacles to intercept them. That's when the human fleet showed another advantage of their primitive approach. All ships, close to knife-fighting range, Admiral Kowalski's voice came over the fleet channel. Show them what real combat looks like. The human vessels surged forward, moving into the middle of the swarm. At these close distances, the void creatures couldn't dodge. There was nowhere to go. The human ships opened fire with their point defense systems, smaller rapid-fire guns that threw thousands of rounds per minute. The UNS Stalingrad, one of the heavy dreadnoughts, found itself surrounded by smaller void creatures. They swarmed over its hull, trying to tear through the armor plating with claws and acid. The ship's captain responded by venting atmosphere from specific sections, using the explosive decompression to blast creatures off the hull. Then he activated the hull-mounted flamethrowers, primitive weapons meant for exactly this kind of close-quarters defense. "Boarding parties, stand by," Zhao heard over the channel. It was Captain Rodriguez from the destroyer UNS Defiant. His ship had been grabbed by a massive void creature that was trying to crush it. Rather than try to break free, Rodriguez had done something that made the alien observers gasp in shock. He'd ordered his Marines to board the creature. Airlocks on the Defiant opened, and armored figures jumped out into space. They wore heavy mechanized suits, covered in metal plates and carrying weapons that looked like they belonged in a museum. Assault rifles, shotguns, flamethrowers, grenade launchers. The Marines landed on the void creature's surface and immediately opened fire. Bullets tore into alien flesh. Flamethrowers sprayed chemical fire across the creature's hide. Grenades exploded in its wounds. The creature thrashed and tried to shake them off, but the Marines had magnetic boots and were not going to be dislodged. One Marine, Zhao could see from the video feed, pulled out what looked like a mining charge, planted it in a wound, and activated it. The explosion came from inside the creature and it went limp. Dead. "This is insane," someone said on the Alien Observer channel. "They're using individual soldiers against space-capable organisms." "It's working," the Kruthax ambassador replied, and there was respect in his voice now. "By the gods, it's actually working." The human fleet pressed its advantage. The void swarm was still trying to adapt, growing thicker armor, developing defensive formations, attempting to grab and crush the human ships. But every adaptation took time, and the humans kept changing their tactics. When armor got too thick, they switched to explosive rounds that didn't need to penetrate, just deliver shockwaves. When creatures tried to grab ships, those ships would vent their fusion drives, using the exhaust as a weapon to burn the creatures away. When the swarm tried to surround them, the human vessels would form defensive circles and create fields of fire that nothing could survive. "Enemy forces are falling back," Tactical reported. "We've destroyed over 3,000 contacts. The rest are retreating." Zhao allowed herself a small smile. "Don't let up. Pursuit course. Keep hitting them." Because that was another human principle that the aliens had forgotten. When your enemy runs, you chase them. You don't give them time to regroup, to adapt, to learn. You keep the pressure on until they're broken. The human fleet pursued the void swarm through the Sigma Persei junction, their weapons never stopping. Behind them, the alien vessels watched in stunned silence. The UNS Indomitable took a hit from a dying void creature, a last desperate attack that tore a gash in her starboard side. Alarms blared and damage reports flooded in. But the crew didn't abandon ship. They grabbed welding torches and metal plates and began repairs immediately, even as the battle continued around them. Damage control teams to Section 7. Zhao heard Captain Okafor command from the Indomitable. Seal that breach. Engineering, reroute power from non-essential systems. We're not out of this fight yet. That was the human way. Their ships could take damage that would disable an alien vessel and keep fighting. Because they were built simply, with redundant systems, with the expectation that things would break and need to be fixed in the middle of combat. An energy weapon fails, and you need sophisticated repair facilities. A railgun jams and a crew member can fix it with a hammer and some tools. Admiral Kowalski to all ships, the fleet commander's voice came through. Well done, people. The swarm is in retreat. Hold this position and wait for the alien fleet to regroup. Zhao looked at the tactical display. The void swarm was scattered, broken, fleeing into dark space. The human fleet had taken losses. 3 destroyers destroyed, 2 cruisers heavily damaged, every ship showing some degree of battle damage. But they had held the line when the advanced civilizations couldn't. On the alien communication channels, there was only silence now. No more laughter. No more jokes about primitive human technology. Just the quiet sound of beings reassessing everything they thought they knew about warfare. The steel giants had roared and the galaxy had listened. The human fleet didn't stop. While the crystalline collective's ships retreated to their support stations for repairs, while the Zephyr Dominion's interceptors pulled back to analyze their failures, while the Krithax dreadnoughts withdrew to develop new weapons, the human vessels pressed forward. Damaged, battered, with hull breaches sealed by emergency patches and weapons running low on ammunition, they continued hunting the void swarm. Captain Maria Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the destroyer UNS Defiant. Her ship looking like it had been through a meat grinder. Scorch marks covered the hull. One of the main railgun turrets was offline. The portside armor had been completely torn away in 3 sections. But the engine still worked, the crew was alive, and they still had weapons that could fire. Contact bearing 270. Lieutenant Morrison reported from sensors. Looks like a cluster of void creatures, maybe 50 of them, trying to regroup. Plot an intercept course, Rodriguez ordered. Load armor-piercing rounds in turrets 1 and 3. High explosive in turret 2. I want fragmentation missiles ready in tubes 4 through 8. Captain, shouldn't we wait for support? Morrison asked carefully. Rodriguez shook her head. The Admiral's orders were clear. Don't give them time to adapt. Every minute we wait is a minute they use to learn and evolve. We hit them now while they're still vulnerable to our weapons. That was the human approach to this battle. The Void Swarm's greatest strength was adaptation, so the humans denied them the time to adapt. It was simple, brutal logic. Keep attacking. Keep changing tactics. Never give the enemy a chance to figure you out. The Defiant accelerated toward the target. Around them, other human ships were doing the same, spreading out across the battlefield to hunt down scattered groups of void creatures. The fleet had split into smaller task forces, each one independent but coordinated through simple radio communication. Enemy cluster is trying to form a defensive sphere, Morrison reported. They're linking their bodies together like before. They learned that trick, Rodriguez noted. Time to teach them why it doesn't work. Fire bunker busters into the center of their formation. Soon as they break apart, hit them with fragmentation missiles. The Defiant's torpedoes launched, 4 heavy warheads that accelerated toward the void cluster. The creatures saw them coming and tightened their formation, trying to create a shell thick enough to stop the weapons. The torpedoes punched into the living mass and detonated deep inside. The formation exploded outward, creatures blown apart or sent spinning away from each other. Then the fragmentation missiles hit. Each one detonated into thousands of small, fast-moving pieces of metal that tore through the scattered creatures like a shotgun blast. Within seconds, the cluster was destroyed. Target eliminated, Morrison confirmed. Wait, we're getting a transmission from one of the Krithax observation ships. They want to know our tactics. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Tell them it's called combined arms warfare. Different weapons for different situations. Something we learned about 3,000 years ago. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. The human ships had split the Void Swarm into smaller groups and were systematically destroying them. When creatures developed thick armor, the humans switched to weapons designed to cause internal damage. When they tried to move faster, the humans used prediction algorithms that had been developed in the age of ballistic missiles. When they attempted to camouflage themselves, humans used thermal sensors and simple radar. For every adaptation the void creatures made, humanity had a counter. Not because their technology was advanced, but because it was diverse. Thousands of years of human warfare had produced weapons for every possible scenario. The aliens had evolved beyond such primitive thinking, consolidating their militaries around advanced energy weapons and quantum technology. Humanity had never stopped developing new ways to kill things with simple physics. Admiral Kowalski watched the battle from the Indomitable's bridge. His flagship was heavily damaged, limping along on 3 engines instead of 6, but still in command. He studied the tactical display, watching as human ships maneuvered and fought. "Sir, the Crystalline Commander is requesting communication," Lieutenant Park informed him. "Put them through," Kowalski said. The crystalline being appeared on the screen, their usually bright surface now dim and flickering. "Admiral Kowalski, your fleet should fall back. You've taken severe damage. Allow our ships to take over the pursuit once we've completed our repairs." "With respect, Commander, how long will your repairs take?" Kowalski asked. "At least 14 hours to develop new weapons effective against the swarm's current adaptations. Then another 6 to implement them across the fleet." 20 hours, Kowalski repeated. "In 20 hours, those creatures will have adapted to everything we've thrown at them. They'll be unstoppable again. We don't have 20 hours. But your ships are barely functional," the crystalline protested. Kowalski looked around his bridge, at the crew working at damaged stations, at the screens showing hull breaches being patched, at the weapons displays showing ammunition levels in the red. Then he looked at the determination on every face he could see. "Barely functional is still functional," he said. "We'll hold them here." On the screen, the Crystalline Commander was silent for a moment. We underestimated you. Your weapons, your tactics, your determination. We thought you were primitive." "We are primitive," Kowalski agreed. "But sometimes primitive works. When your energy weapons failed, you had nothing to fall back on. When our railguns jam, we have missiles. When missiles run out, we have guns. When guns fail, we have knives and our own 2 hands. That's the advantage of being primitive. We have options." He cut the communication and turned to his crew. "All ships continue the pursuit. I want constant pressure on the enemy. Don't let them rest, don't let them adapt. Commander Zhao, your task force will hit their left flank. Captain Rodriguez, take your destroyers and cut off their retreat. Captain Okafor, you're with me. We're going straight down their throat." The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves harrying a wounded bear. They struck from different angles, using different weapons, changing tactics constantly. The Void Swarm tried to adapt, but every time they evolved to counter one threat, the humans would switch to another. A group of creatures developed armor against kinetic weapons. The humans switched to thermobaric explosives that didn't need to penetrate, just create massive pressure waves. When the creatures grew resistant to heat, the humans used cryogenic weapons, flash freezing sections of their bodies and then shattering them with kinetic impacts. The UNS Thermopylae, Commander Zhao's ship, took a different approach. When they encountered a particularly large void creature that seemed to be coordinating the others, they didn't try to destroy it. They captured it. "Boarding teams, go," Zhao ordered. Marines in mechanized armor launched from the Thermopylae, carrying specialized equipment. They landed on the creature and began cutting into its hide with plasma torches, not to kill it, but to implant monitoring devices deep in its body. Within minutes, human scientists were receiving biological data about how the creatures adapted. "Got it," the science officer reported. "Their adaptation mechanism works through chemical signals between individuals. If we can disrupt those signals, do it," Zhao commanded. The Thermopylae launched a new type of missile, one that released a cloud of chemicals designed to interfere with the void creature's communication. The effect was immediate. The coordinated swarm began to act confused, individuals moving randomly instead of as a group. "All ships, this is Thermopylae," Zhao broadcast. "We found a weakness. Chemical interference disrupts their coordination. Transmitting the compound formula now. Engineering teams can mix it from standard ship supplies." Within an hour, human ships were producing and deploying the interference compound. The Void Swarm's greatest advantage, their ability to quickly share adaptations across the entire group, was being disrupted. On the alien observation channels, the other races watched in amazement. "They're not just fighting," the Zephyr ambassador said quietly. "They're learning, adapting themselves." "Ironic," the Krithax commander growled. "The swarm adapts to weapons. The humans adapt their tactics faster than the swarm can adapt to them." Captain Rodriguez's destroyer group found themselves surrounded by void creatures that had evolved specifically to counter human weapons. Thick armor against kinetics, heat resistance against flames. They'd become nearly immune to everything the Defiant could throw at them. "Captain, we're in trouble," Morrison reported. "We can't penetrate their defenses." Rodriguez studied the enemy for a moment. Then she smiled. "They adapted to our weapons. But did they adapt to our ships? All power to forward engines. Ram that big one in the center, Captain?" Morrison looked shocked. "You heard me. Full speed. We're 6,000 tons of metal and ceramics moving at high velocity. Let's see them adapt to that." The Defiant accelerated directly at the largest void creature. At the last second, Rodriguez ordered all personnel to brace positions. The destroyer hit the creature at full speed, and the creature's armor, designed to resist kinetic projectiles, crumpled under the impact of an entire ship. The Defiant punched straight through the creature, emerging from the other side covered in alien biological matter but otherwise intact. "Damage report," Rodriguez barked, picking herself up from where the impact had thrown her. "Hull stress within acceptable limits," Morrison reported, sounding amazed. "Forward armor is gone, but we're still spaceworthy." "Good," Rodriguez said. "Mark that tactic as effective. Resume the hunt." The human fleet continued its relentless advance. They didn't stop to fully repair their ships, making do with emergency patches. They didn't wait for optimal conditions, attacking whenever they found enemy contacts. They didn't preserve their ammunition, using everything they had because they knew resupply ships were following behind them. It was the opposite of how the advanced races fought. The aliens treated their ships as precious, irreplaceable assets. Humans treated their ships as weapons themselves, expendable if necessary to complete the mission. And slowly, inevitably, the Void Swarm was being pushed back. Not because humanity had better technology, but because they had something more important: the willingness to keep fighting no matter what, the ability to adapt faster than their enemy could evolve, and the sheer bloody-minded stubbornness to never, ever stop until the job was done. Admiral Kowalski received a report that the Indomitable's main reactor was running at dangerous levels and needed to be shut down for repairs. He ordered them to switch to the backup reactor and keep fighting. When told they were down to 15% ammunition, he ordered them to make every shot count and prepare for ramming speed if needed. The alien fleets were still repairing, still analyzing, still developing new weapons. The human fleet was still fighting, still adapting, still pushing forward. And the Void Swarm, for the first time in their long history, was learning what it meant to face an enemy that simply refused to quit. The Battle of Sigma Persei Junction officially ended 37 hours after it began. The Void Swarm, faced with an enemy they couldn't adapt to fast enough, retreated into dark space. Human ships pursued them to the edge of known territory, then watched as the creatures fled into the void between galaxies. Admiral Kowalski stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at the damage reports. Of the 90 ships that had engaged the swarm, 36 were destroyed completely. Every single surviving vessel was damaged to some degree. The Indomitable herself was running on backup systems, had lost half her weapons, and had hull breaches on 3 decks that were sealed only by emergency force fields. But they had won. "Sir, the Galactic Fleet is requesting permission to approach," Lieutenant Park said. "Granted," Kowalski replied. He was tired, bone-tired, in a way he hadn't felt since the wars of his youth. Every muscle ached. His eyes were burning from staring at screens for nearly 2 days straight. And he was pretty sure he'd forgotten what real food tasted like after living on combat rations. The alien vessels approached carefully, almost hesitantly. Their sleek, undamaged hulls looked pristine compared to the battered human fleet. Kowalski could see the contrast clearly. Ships that had run away and ships that had stood and fought. "Admiral," Park said quietly, "the Galactic Council is reconvening. They're requesting your presence. And sir, the Crystalline Collective's premier wants to speak with Ambassador Chen directly." Kowalski nodded. "Tell them I'll be there as soon as we've secured the fleet and taken care of our wounded. Our people come first." It took another 6 hours before Kowalski felt comfortable leaving his ship. The crew had worked miracles, patching holes, rerouting power, making the Indomitable somewhat stable again. Medical teams had treated the wounded. The dead had been honored and recorded. Only then did Kowalski take a shuttle to the council chamber. The great crystalline room looked the same as before, but the atmosphere was completely different. Where before there had been confidence and barely hidden contempt for humanity, now there was silence and something that looked like respect. Ambassador Chen was already there, standing in the human delegation area. She nodded to Kowalski as he entered. Around them, the other delegates watched quietly. The council speaker stood. Admiral Kowalski, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I must express our gratitude. Your fleet held the line when ours could not. You saved countless lives across 100 worlds. Kowalski said nothing. He was too tired for diplomatic speeches. The crystalline premier approached. In person, they were even more impressive, standing nearly 3 meters tall, their body catching and refracting light in beautiful patterns. They stopped in front of Ambassador Chen and did something unexpected. They bowed, a gesture of respect that Kowalski had never seen from the advanced races. Ambassador Chen, Admiral Kowalski, the premier said, their voice like music. We underestimated your kind. We saw your metal ships and your kinetic weapons, and we thought you were primitive. We were wrong. Not about your technology, but about what that means. You were right that our technology is primitive, Chen said calmly. Compared to yours, our ships are relics from a bygone age. But that's why they worked, the Krithax commander said, stepping forward. His massive form was scarred from battle, even though his ship had barely engaged the enemy. The Void Swarm has faced advanced civilizations before. They've evolved to counter energy weapons, quantum effects, dimensional warfare. They'd never faced anyone who still used metal slugs and chemical explosives. It's more than that, the Zephyr ambassador added, their gaseous forms swirling in their containment field. We watched your fleet continue fighting with damaged systems, with wounded crew, with almost no ammunition. We would have withdrawn to repair. You simply adapted and kept going. Kowalski finally spoke. That's the human way. We learned a long time ago that the most advanced weapon is useless if it breaks and you can't fix it. We build redundancy into everything. Every critical system has a backup. Every weapon has an alternative. We don't rely on one solution because we know that no solution is perfect. Your ships can be operated manually, the crystalline premier observed, even without computers. We saw crew members using physical controls when their automated systems failed. Yes, Chen confirmed. We learned not to trust automation completely. A computer can be hacked, can malfunction, can fail. A human with a lever and a gauge can keep a ship running even when everything else is gone. The council speaker gestured at the holographic display. It showed recordings from the battle. Human ships ramming void creatures, Marines boarding alien organisms in vacuum, engineers welding hull patches while still under fire, captains refusing to retreat even when their ships were falling apart around them. Your people treated their ships as expendable, the Zephyr said. They were willing to sacrifice million-credit vessels without hesitation. Ships can be rebuilt, Kowalski said simply. Lives can't. But we also understand that sometimes you have to risk both to get the job done. Our ships aren't precious museum pieces. They're tools, weapons, built to be used hard and replaced when necessary. We've been building ships to avoid losses for so long, we forgot that war involves loss, the Krethax admitted. Your willingness to accept damage, to take casualties, to keep fighting even when hurt. We've become too civilized to remember how to do that. Chen smiled slightly. We're less civilized than you. We still remember what it's like to fight for survival. Earth taught us hard lessons over thousands of years of warfare. We learned to be stubborn, to be adaptable, to never give up even when we're losing. Those lessons served us well out here. The council speaker looked at the assembled delegates. The council must formally recognize humanity's contribution to the defense of galactic civilization. I propose full membership status for humanity, with all rights and privileges. There were sounds of agreement from around the chamber. No one laughed now. No one made jokes about primitive technology. Additionally, the crystalline premier said, we would like to request human military advisors. We need to learn your ways of warfare, not just your weapons, but your philosophy, your approach to combat. You want to learn how to be primitive? Kowalski asked, a hint of humor in his tired voice. We want to learn how to survive, the premier corrected. Your primitive methods defeated an enemy we couldn't touch with our advanced technology. That suggests our advancement may have made us weak in ways we didn't understand. Over the next few days, the requests poured in. The Zephyr Dominion wanted to buy human weapon systems. The Krithax wanted human engineers to teach them about redundant systems. The Crystalline Collective wanted to completely redesign their fleet based on human principles. Kowalski spent hours in meetings, explaining concepts that seemed obvious to him, but revolutionary to the aliens. Backup systems, manual controls, simple, rugged designs that could take damage and keep functioning. Diverse weapon loadouts instead of specialized systems. Trained crews instead of automation. The key, he explained to a group of alien military commanders, is to never rely on just one solution. Your energy weapons are incredibly powerful, but what happens when they don't work? You need alternatives. Physical projectiles, chemical explosives, directed energy, all of it. When one fails, you switch to another. But that requires carrying multiple weapon systems, a crystalline officer protested. It reduces efficiency. Efficiency is useless if you're dead, Kowalski countered. Better to be 70% efficient with 5 different weapons than 100% efficient with one weapon that stops working. He showed them human ship designs, pointing out the layers of redundancy. See here? If the main reactor fails, there's a backup. If that fails, there's an emergency power system. If that fails, there are battery banks that can run critical systems for hours. If those fail, there are manual systems that don't need power at all. A human ship can lose 90% of its systems and still limp home. But the complexity, another officer began. Complexity is fine if it's manageable complexity, Kowalski interrupted. Our systems are simple enough that a crew member can understand and repair them. Your quantum drives are more efficient, but can your crew fix one if it breaks in the middle of battle? Ours can fix a fusion drive with spare parts and welding equipment. Ambassador Chen met with the Galactic Council to discuss the future. Humanity is willing to share our knowledge, she said, but we need you to understand something. Our way of warfare isn't pretty. It's brutal and unforgiving. It involves accepting losses, taking risks, and sometimes sacrificing ships and lives to achieve objectives. Are you prepared for that? The council speaker nodded slowly. The Void Swarm taught us that our advanced civilization made us soft. We became so focused on avoiding casualties and preserving our resources that we forgot how to actually fight. Yes, Ambassador Chen, we're ready to learn no matter how brutal the lessons. 3 months later, the first joint human-alien vessel was launched. The UNS Unity was built with both human and alien technology, incorporating the best of both worlds. It had human-style redundant systems and diverse weapons, but also incorporated alien energy shields and faster-than-light drives. The shields would protect it, but if they failed, the physical armor would hold. The advanced drives would get it places quickly, but if they broke, the reliable fusion engines could still get it home. Admiral Kowalski attended the christening ceremony. He watched as human and alien crew members worked together, learning from each other. The aliens were learning about backup plans and manual controls. The humans were learning about advanced materials and energy manipulation. It's a good ship, he said to Chen, who stood beside him. It's a symbol, Chen replied, of what we can accomplish together. Your steel giants taught the galaxy an important lesson. What's that? That advancement isn't about having the most sophisticated technology. It's about being able to survive and adapt when that technology fails. It's about having the courage to keep fighting when things look hopeless. It's about being too stubborn to quit. Chen smiled. Turns out those are very human qualities. Kowalski nodded. And now the galaxy is learning them. Let's hope they never need to use these lessons again. But he knew they would. The Void Swarm was still out there, somewhere in the dark between galaxies. Other threats would emerge. The universe was a dangerous place. But now at least the galaxy was a little bit more prepared, because they'd learned something from humanity. Something that couldn't be measured in energy output or quantum calculations or dimensional mathematics. They'd learned that sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. That reliability beats sophistication. That determination and stubbornness can overcome almost any obstacle. They'd learned to fight like humans, and the galaxy was stronger for it. As Kowalski left the ceremony, heading back to oversee the reconstruction of the human fleet, he thought about the journey humanity had taken. From a primitive species that the galaxy laughed at, to the ones who saved that same galaxy when advanced technology failed. The aliens had called human ships relics, museum pieces, primitive tools from a bygone era. They'd been right. But sometimes, Kowalski thought with a tired smile, an old reliable hammer is exactly what you need when your fancy power tools stop working. And humanity had always been very, very good with hammers.